listen to fall to the floor.
Hello, welcome back to another pen talk. Thanks for tuning in. Nice pouch we have. Comes with a lot of Chinese pens. It's a functional pouch and helps protect the pen through shipping. But what's really interesting is what's inside the pouch. So this is a pen I bought on a whim to explore. And visually, it came across fairly nicely. Some decent chatoyancy in there. They called it a celluloid, but obviously it's not. So one of the obvious things is see that there's a seam there. So this is a sheet that's wrapped around maybe a mandrel or whatever to produce this effect. You know, it's not machined from acrylic, it's not cast, it's not injection molded, obviously, from the way these colors are, but it is a less expensive way. A lot of the Tier 3 vintage pens were made from a wrapped material like this one. So there's that seam in the cap. So, you know, overall, it probably is a pen I could have done without. I kind of was interested in the clear section, and you know, I don't think it really works with this pen visually. You know, it's just Tier 3 Chinese pens don't do the same thing for me as Tier 3 American vintage does. You know, it posts okay. Line that up. The section's on the small side. So this has been cleaned up a little bit. Link it up and see how it writes, but it has that classic, you know, kind of pilot-like nib in there, which is very, very fine. It's called an extra fine, so it's a .38 nib. Nice clear section, but again, I don't think the balance is there aesthetically. If this material was alone, I think a black section would work better. In doing my research on the pen I just acquired, it reminded me of a pen I got a few years ago from eBay. It was considered vintage then. Cap, clip, pretty much identical. You got the little black disc at the top. Across the band you have some Chinese and then the word numbers 271, but as you can see it says Lucky, which is a Wing Sung trademark. Like the other one, it's an unscrew cap, black section, just your standard nib, nothing special. And you know, your plastic feet on the back, very, very fine nib. I wrote with one of these other ones. I had a black one and a blue one. You know, it has this faux piston filler here, kind of reminiscent of a Pelican. You know, the clip has that mimicking, you know, little finial here at the top, the double bands, you know, that's basically what they did. The 271 is no longer available. Here's something that I did find, which shows it out of stock on a Chinese website. One of the things that, you know, might have changed from what I might consider this one here, the yellow one, as a mashup of parts. So they put on a different section. As you can see, it's a much longer section, and from the threads, I guess it fits in that cap, but it doesn't fit in by much. You know, these both have two different filling mechanisms. That's one of the other things that's different about them. This one has a converter, and this one has a aerometric filler. But what's nice about this aerometric filler is you can remove it and replace it with a screw type converter. It fits fine. And you know, the Jinhaos will work in here. Any international standard will work, so you're not limited by that. So that's interesting between these two pens. So we got a little bit of sunlight coming in, so we'll see how that impacts this mock celluloid material here. I mean, it's okay. I wouldn't say it justifies buying the pen, but I'm glad I had a chance to see it in real life and appreciate some of its aesthetic qualities, but the seam really bothers me. Even though, Pelicans with that striping in their 400s, 600s, and 800s, and 1000s are also a wrapped sheet, but they've done a lot of work to make certain that that seam is not visible in the pen. For a little size comparison, we have a 78G, which I think is a pretty good pen to compare size-wise. Then we have your 3008 and your Lamy All-Star. So I would call it a medium-small pen. So here we have the business end, and it has been filled with ink, and that transparent feed in section certainly doesn't look quite as offensive as it did to me when I first looked at the pen. So I'm going to say that I'm not that concerned about it once you fill it with ink. Section's pretty similar in size to the 78G. The 3008 is slightly bigger, but not a lot. And of course, the Lamy Safari is an animal unto itself. And as you see, these all have similar types of nibs. These are the Lamy style nibs, obviously on the Lamy. And these are your, looks to be about a number 5 nib, your standard nib from that perspective. What ink to use? Well, for those of you that follow my channel, I get into certain inks at a period of time, and I went to the Pelican Hub meeting a couple months ago, and one of the nice things is you get a sample of their ink of the year. So Smoky Quartz was that sample, so that's what we're going to use to ink up this pen. I've used Smoky Quartz in a few other pens, and I kind of like it. I'm not certain Smoky Quartz is a name that adequately describes the look of the ink. It's a brown ink that has a decent amount of shading to it, and that's nice. For those that like to look at chromatography, here is the Smoky Quartz, and it appears to be kind of a couple different colors of brown and orange, a little bit of red in there. So, it's interesting. Let's see how that looks when you put nib to paper. So one of the things that I haven't really talked about much is these agitators that are sometimes in converters. And they do, I think, try to serve the purpose of breaking up ink that may be at the top of the converter and not making it down to the feed. But to me, the challenge is when you clean these things out, that ring, that spring collects a lot of ink, and it makes it more difficult to completely clean it out of ink, but not impossible. So I've already flushed this pen and got it ready for inking. So we'll take a look at how this converter pulls up ink. Now that's your classic first draw. I always do 3 of them to make certain that that feed is completely flushed with ink, and if there's any residues left after my cleaning, hopefully that's taken care of them. So after 3 draws, we're still, probably a half a mil in there. But for the purposes of the writing sample, that should be sufficient. So this is a very lightweight pen, 14.3 grams. It's long enough to fit fine in the hand without posting. The cap weighs almost nothing, so posting it, and it posts deeply and securely, doesn't change the balance at all. So whether you post or not post, this pen will work fine for you. It's hard to say what to call this, but we'll call it a hero because that's what the listing was. And they call it a celluloid. Boy, that's terrible, but I did my best. And this nib is performing better than I expected. When I first inked it up, it was really dry, but after a little bit of writing, it started to flow really well. It also now requires very little pressure. I wouldn't call it the smoothest nib, but it certainly is on the fine side. And it lays down a decent patch of ink. Yeah, that's a consistent brown. Like I say, Smoky Quartz is kind of a strange name for this ink as far as I'm concerned. So hopefully you've enjoyed this quick look at a pen. I don't know how much it's going to be available, but you know, this is of that vintage series which shows up on occasion from eBay sellers, and generally at a decent price, but certainly I don't think this pen compares to the newer versions of the Chinese pens, like, you know, the 698 to 3008, you know, the 3003. There's a ton of them out there now, which I think are extremely well made, have great nibs, excellent filling systems. So if you want a bit of nostalgia, I guess this would apply. And that, you know, it is an interesting color and the way the Chatoyan C works there. So thank you for watching. I will try to write better, but, you know, the handwriting is what the handwriting is, and this is more to show the pen and nib and ink on this paper, which is Fabriano. So it's a little bit absorbent, and I just enjoy it because it's very consistent. So until we meet again, we're going to say bye, and it's out of order. So bye, and then we'll follow that by the end. Enjoy your pen, ink, and paper experiences. Enjoy all facets of life. They are fun. Till later, bye.